Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about the 5 biggest final immunity challenge chokes in Survivor history. No, Rob, no. Not that kind of choke. Rather, we'll be talking about 5 players who were but a single challenge victory away from winning the game, known challenge beasts, or people who otherwise had a sizable advantage heading into or throughout the final immunity challenge, and who completely blew it. These are players for which winning the final immunity challenge was a do-or-die situation, and they did not do. Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to the one player who probably should have choked at Final Immunity. That would be Wu, who won the Cagayan Final Immunity Challenge by a literal second, foolishly took Tony to the Final 2, and got completely blown out. Had he choked or even just been a few seconds behind, Cass wins the challenge, takes Wu over Tony, and he's roughly $1 million richer. Unless you're Wu, though, choking at the most critical challenge of the game typically isn't a great idea. How not great of an idea? Let's find out. All that said, let's dig into the 5 biggest final immunity challenge chokes in Survivor history. At number 5 is Kelly Wentworth in Survivor Cambodia, who choked at the Final 4 immunity challenge, Simotion. This is the classic ball and shoot challenge introduced in Survivor Tocantins, wherein the castaways, with one hand tied behind their back, drop a ball down a winding metal chute, catch it out of alternating exit holes, and then drop it back in at the top. Eventually, multiple balls are added, making this a test of concentration, spatial judgment, and ball savviness.
Yeah, ball savviness.
This was a challenge Wentworth needed to win. Having made strong social connections and playing extremely well from the bottom the entire post-merge, including pulling off one of the flashiest and greatest idol plays of all time, Wentworth just needed to clutch this challenge for an easy win against Spencer and Tasha at the final 3. This jury wasn't terribly enthused about either of them, and didn't particularly care about Spencer Bott's growth into a real boy. Now, I usually try to avoid going behind the scenes on these videos, but it's pretty necessary to understand how big of a choke this final challenge was for Wentworth. In a post-game interview with The Wrap, Kelly explains that she actually did very well in a practice heat. Quote, "We got to practice that final challenge once before we did it. We had one practice run, and I killed it. The second time, when we actually filmed it, I got in my own head." Unfortunately, Wentworth does not count the amount of balls she has in this shoot because at the 3 ball mark, she drops out. The first person to do so in an absolutely devastating choke when she needed it most, closing the book on one of the best from the bottom games ever played. She was voted out here, and Jeremy sailed to an easy win over Spencer and Tasha. Although, in all honesty, this wasn't fair from the start. Spencer's recent firmware update actually installed maximum efficiency for this challenge. At number 4 is Cere in Survivor Micronesia, who choked at the Final 3 immunity challenge, Ball Drop. In this challenge, the Final 3 have to balance a small metal ball on a wooden cylinder, and every 5 minutes, pieces are added to either side to increase the length of the cylinder, making the balancing more and more difficult as time goes on. Last person left balancing their ball wins. Now, it's no secret that Cere's no challenge beast. I mean, the show gave her soaring hero music and Game Changers when she managed to walk across a beam without falling off. I mean, come on, Jeff. Plenty of people on the show have walked across beams without falling. Where's their hero music? Cere isn't Sandra tier bad at challenges, but she's not great, which honestly only makes her consistent game dominance all the more impressive in my opinion. But the Micronesia Final Immunity Challenge seems almost tailor-made for her skills, testing steady hands and calmness under pressure. Cere even points out in confessional how perfect this challenge is for her. Cere is an OR nurse. Steady hands and calmness under pressure are kind of critical skills in that field so that you don't, like Dr. Nick it and drop a tool or a sandwich in the patient or something. Cere, Parviti, and Amanda all have an impressive run in this challenge, but the writing's kind of on the wall for Cere, whose stack collapses the second they're safe to reset, as well as when Jeff's counting her and Amanda in for the 4th round. Cere and Amanda both make it to the final round, holding 9 pieces. But Cere eventually drops her stack, giving the win to Amanda, who takes Parvati to the final 2 and soundly loses. In a pretty great editing moment, this loss is even foreshadowed in episode 6, as Cere complains about real-life builder Tracy failing a building challenge.
If they had an operating room challenge and I lost, I couldn't go back to my job.
Guys, this is why you should never say anything potentially ironic on Survivor. It will only be used against you. At number 3 is Ben in Survivor Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers, whose final immunity choke would have cost him the game, if not for the sudden introduction of Final 4 firemaking this season. The final immunity challenge, You Shook Me, is a genuinely brilliant final challenge introduced here in Triple H, wherein the castaways have to spell out their season's name with blocks balanced on a wobbly platform. To retrieve more blocks, they must lock in their platform with a switch on the ground. Pretty much every part of this challenge is designed to make the platform shake and drop letters, meaning the challenge is a true test of patience, steady hands, and calmness under pressure. Chrissy, Ryan, and Devin are all in agreement that Ben needs to go here at Final 4. He was a huge jury threat after Ben bombing his way through the game with flashy idol plays that wowed the jury. Up against Chrissy, who'd won 3 immunity challenges, Devin, an all-around skilled challenge competitor, and Ryan, who's there, Ben really needed to clutch this challenge to get to Final 3. This challenge was a true horse race, with each of the Final 4 in the lead several times, before knocking off some or all of their blocks. Ben actually manages to get every single piece in place, locks it in and calls Jeff over, but an accidental upside-down U in Hustlers forces him to unlock his stack and correct it, knocking down most of the stack in the process. Or perhaps he actually thought this season was Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hnstlers? Wouldn't be the first time a Survivor player misspelled with aplomb. Got it! Really, Dan? Quituit oblalte outlast? Okay. The upside down U leaves an opening for Chrissy to get ahead and win her 4th immunity challenge of the season, which she does. Ben is then unanimously voted off by this final 3, who went on to deliver one of the most exciting final tribal councils in history, with Chrissy and Devin both having major claims to the win, and with Ryan as an underrated sleeper threat. That's what I would be saying if not for a late game advantage given to Chrissy, which introduced Final 4 firemaking, giving Ben a surprise second shot for his life in the game, which he took full advantage of. Ben's firemaking win sent him to the finals and a win over Chrissy and Ryan, where he was crowned the ultimate hero, healer, and Hnstlr. At number 2 is Malcolm in Survivor Philippines, who choked on the same final immunity challenge that doomed Cere, Ball Drop. Now, Malcolm is an all-around great Survivor player. From strategy to social to physical to man bun, he's at least an 8 out of 10 in every single aspect of the game. The Pablo Sanchez of Survivor. So heading into the final immunity challenge, Malcolm was the odds-on favorite to win both the challenge and the game. But the Philippines final immunity is a test of literally the one thing Malcolm isn't god tier at: having steady hands. This is another moment foreshadowed earlier in the season, when Malcolm tells us his hands get shaky when he's nervous or excited. Now, obviously, this challenge isn't really Malcolm's forte, but what makes this such a huge choke for me is that he had an absolutely massive advantage in this challenge he'd won at the previous reward challenge. Should he drop his ball, he'll get a second shot, a get out of fail free card, which he's gonna need almost immediately. In the second round, Malcolm drops out early, so everyone resets. And as soon as the reset happens, Malcolm's nerves get the best of him again, his challenge pieces exploding in a cacophony of disappointment. This was obviously a game-ending mistake for Malcolm. He and Denise had been ride or dies the entire game, but by this point, all bets were off, and Lisa and Scoopin viewed Malcolm as a bigger jury threat than Denise. Back at camp, a still nervous Malcolm, ever the good sport, gives his congratulations on a challenge well won.
Thank you, Mr. Forster, and I wanted to congratulate you on winning the fashion challenge.
The biggest final immunity challenge choke in history is Ozzy in Survivor South Pacific, who lost the Lay of the Land challenge to Sophie in a massive upset victory. Ozzy is the all-around greatest challenge competitor in Survivor history in my opinion, so the Redemption Island mechanic in South Pacific, allowing players to get voted off but to win duels to return to the game, was quite advantageous for him. By the Final Four of South Pacific, Ozzy'd already been voted out twice, on Day 18 and Day 22, returned at Final 5 after winning 6 duels in a row, then immunity'd his way to the Final Four. So odds were high that Challenge God Ozzy would win the final immunity, get to Final Tribal, and absolutely destroy whichever combination of Sophie, Coach, and Albert he was sitting next to. As we've now officially confirmed from, what's his name? Chip's win on Edge of Extinction, getting to spend lots of free time with the jury without all that pesky backstabbing is a pretty sweet deal.
Every single jury member has gone through like Ozzy's pleasure dome on the way out.
All that stands between Ozzy and Survivor victory is this 5-pronged challenge, where the Final Four must race out through 5 different mini obstacle courses, collect puzzle pieces, then put together a difficult final puzzle. Ozzy, of course, absolutely smokes the first portion of this challenge, pulling ahead of the Apollo 3 by almost 2 full laps. Probably because Albert keeps getting in Sophie's way. Shouldn't you be like sabotaging Ozzy instead? Ozzy's already on the puzzle before anyone even has their 4th bag back. But as we all know, challenges on Survivor are won and lost on the puzzle. Once Sophie gets her first puzzle piece in, you can see the panic set in on Ozzy's face as his lead completely evaporates, leading to a challenge upset that made Ozzy very upset. Sophie, Coach, and Albert obviously vote off Ozzy here, and back at camp, Coach ceremoniously relinquishes the title of Dragon Slayer to Sophie, making her the official reigning Dragon Slayer of Survivor.
A new Slayer is born!
Albert, I love your approach to ruining this moment. Got nothing else for you? To help me, Hero, Healer, and Hunsel out some new videos, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.